Hey there. Welcome to Chilling Lullabies. I'm here to help you relax tonight. So before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It really makes us feel like the global community it is. Just a heads up, there'll be a few ads in the first 30 minutes, then it's completely ad-free after that. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's begin our evening together. Story 1. The speedometer needle quivered at 75 as Mark Fielding pressed harder on the accelerator. The rental car's engine whined in protest, but he didn't care. Couldn't care. Every second mattered now. 6 hours ago, he'd been sitting in a Phoenix conference room, half listening to quarterly projections, when his phone buzzed. The display showed Danny's number, and Mark had almost declined the call. His 18-year-old son rarely called during business hours unless he needed money or had gotten into some kind of trouble. But something made him step outside to answer. Mr. Fielding? The voice wasn't Danny's. It was professional, clinical, female. This is Nurse Brenda Shaw at Carson Tahoe Regional Medical Center. I'm calling about your son, Daniel. The world had tilted sideways in that moment. Mark had found himself gripping the doorframe of the conference room, his legs suddenly unreliable. Motorcycle accident, the nurse had continued, her words arriving like physical blows. Critical condition, multiple trauma. You need to come now. Now Mark climbed through the Sierra Nevada passes, racing against time and his own mounting terror. The fog had rolled in thick as cotton batting somewhere around Carson City, transforming the familiar highway into something alien and treacherous. He leaned forward, squinting through the murk, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The headlights carved a pathetic cone of visibility maybe 20 feet ahead, not nearly enough at this speed on these twisting mountain roads. But slowing down wasn't an option. Danny was dying. The word the nurse hadn't said hung in the air like a curse. Dying and dying, dying. Mark's marriage to Carol had ended 3 years ago, destroyed by exactly this kind of absence. You never hear when it matters, she'd screamed during one of their final fights. Always traveling, always working, always somewhere else. She'd been right, of course. He'd missed Danny's graduation speech because of a client meeting in Denver. Missed the championship baseball game because of a conference in Chicago. Missed 1,000 small moments that, in aggregate, had cost him his family. But he wouldn't miss this. Whatever this was, however it ended. The fog seemed to thicken with each mile of elevation gained. Mark had driven this route before years ago when Danny was 10, and they'd gone camping at Lake Tahoe. One of the few trips Carol had insisted Mark take without his laptop, his phone, his endless connection to work. He remembered it as scenic, with sweeping vistas and granite peaks that made Danny gasp with wonder. Now it felt like driving through purgatory, the world reduced to gray, nothing beyond the windshield. A shape materialized in the headlight beam ahead. Mark's foot moved toward the brake pedal instinctively. A man was walking along the shoulder, thumb extended in a universal gesture of the hitchhiker. Mark's first impulse was to speed past. He had no time for strangers, no patience for delays. Danny needed him. But something made him slow down. The man was elderly, perhaps 70, dressed in a dark coat that hung loosely on his thin frame. He stood perfectly still as the car approached, not moving aside for safety as most hitchhikers would. His face was pale in the headlights, deeply lined, with dark eyes that seemed to look right through the windshield and into Mark's soul. There was something about his posture, patient, inevitable, as if he'd been standing there for hours or years. Mark pulled over, idling on the narrow shoulder. His rational mind screamed at him to drive on, but something deeper, Call it compassion or just the ingrained politeness drummed into him by his Depression-era parents made him roll down the passenger window. "Where are you headed?" Mark called out. The old man approached with measured steps, his shoes making soft sound on the wet asphalt. Up close, his face was even more unsettling. Not just aged, but weathered in a way that suggested exposure to more than just the elements. "Just to the other side of the pass," he said. His voice was low, gravelly, with an odd accent Mark couldn't place. Something vaguely European, maybe, but filtered through decades of American English. "Get in." Mark unlocked the doors, already regretting the decision. Every minute counted, and picking up strangers was exactly the kind of thing that led to delays, complications, problems he couldn't afford right now. The old man settled into the passenger seat with surprising agility for his apparent age. He buckled his seatbelt with deliberate care, then sat back with his hands folded in his lap. His fingers were long and thin, the skin almost translucent. "Thank you," he said simply. "It's been a long wait." Something about the phrasing struck Mark as odd, but he was already pulling back onto the highway, immediately pressing the accelerator toward the floor. The fog seemed even thicker now, if that were possible. The yellow center line appeared and disappeared like Morse code beneath the car. "Dangerous night for traveling," the old man observed. His voice held no fear, just a kind of resigned acceptance that struck Mark as strange. Most people would be nervous about the conditions, the speed, the obvious desperation of the driver. But something else was strange about the voice. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, not just from the passenger seat. Mark shook his head slightly. The fog, the exhaustion, the acoustics of the enclosed car were playing tricks on him. "My son is in the hospital," Mark explained curtly. "Motorcycle accident, critical condition." The old man turned to study Mark's profile. "How old?" 18. "Just graduated high school." The words came out mechanically, but speaking them aloud made everything more real, more urgent. "He got the motorcycle for graduation, against my better judgment. I should have put my foot down. Should have, would have, could have," the old man said softly. "The eternal refrain of parents. But children make their own choices, don't they? Their own mistakes." Mark glanced sideways at his passenger, and for a split second his blood chilled. In the passenger side window's reflection, the old man was looking directly at him, staring with those ancient, knowing eyes, even though the man himself was gazing straight ahead at the road. Mark blinked hard, and when he looked again, the reflection matched reality. Just fatigue. The stress of driving through this nightmare was making him see things. There was something knowing in the old man's tone, as if he spoke from experience. "You have kids?" "I've known many children over the years, watched them grow up, make their choices, face their consequences." The old man's voice carried a weight of accumulated sadness. It's one of the hardest things about getting old, watching the young ones repeat the same patterns, the same errors. "Danny's not making errors," Mark said sharply. "He was just riding his motorcycle. Wrong place, wrong time." "Was he wearing a helmet?" The question hit Mark like a slap. He'd asked Danny the same thing dozens of times, had bought him the most expensive helmet money could buy. But teenage boys and safety equipment had an inverse relationship that defied parental logic. "I don't know," Mark admitted. The nurse didn't say. They crested what Mark hoped was a minor summit, though the fog made it impossible to tell. The road began a steeper climb, winding through switchbacks that made Mark's hands ache from gripping the wheel. He realized he hadn't seen another vehicle in miles. No taillights ahead, no headlights in the rearview mirror, just the two of them climbing through this gray limbo. "Tell me about him," the old man said.